The ban list for the Remix Cup has finally been announced. If you're not familiar with what the Remix Cup is, it's going to be the Great League, but with the 10 most popular Pokemon based off of usage statistics internally. We can't see this from the Great League. They're banned. So Azumarill, Galar Stunfisk, they're out of here. This event is running from April 12th to the 26th. So if you do like the Great League, but you feel like these Pokemon are kind of holding you back, or you feel like you're some particular genius and now you can take advantage of all the fools that were relying on Azumarill and Galar Stunfisk before, well, hey, this might be the cup for you. So what is the ban list? Who are the most popular Pokemon? And what is this Remix Cup meta going to look like? How does this influence what picks are good and what picks are bad? Well, I'm going to go through all that with you in this video. So what is the ban list? Who are the 10 most popular Pokemon? Well, I have it up right here, and if you want to link to this, link in the description, of course. But I got a graphic for you to help go through it, help visualize what's going on. And boom, here you go. Yeah, feast your eyes on the 10 most popular Pokemon in Great League Go Battle League. So some of these Pokemon don't come as a big surprise. I mean, you know, Galar Stunfisk, Azumarill, Swampert, Skarmory. We see these things everywhere. Some are also really good, but you don't see them that frequently, like, you know, Venusaur, Alola Marowak, Galvantula, Umbreon. We got a big newcomer that is pretty good in the Great League, but its usage statistic might have been boosted by the community event that happened just before. So we got Talonflame here. And then we got one weird little outlier. We got Alolan Raichu, which came to a surprise to everyone. We're trying to figure out, like, where are these Alolan Raichus coming from? I mean, it is a very cheap and effective Pokemon to build, but the existence of, like, Galar Stunfisk kind of clapped it out of the meta. Like, Alolan Raichu was really good when Registeel was really big, but then Galar Stunfisk showed up and basically did its job, but better, and then basically put Alolan Raichu out of a job. So, a little surprising to see him, but hey, top 10. So what does this mean for the meta? Well, Bastiodon everywhere, because that thing is so freaking popular and wasn't banned, so we're probably going to see a lot of that. But aside from that, there are some inferences that you can make on what the Remix Cup meta is going to look like based off of the banned Pokemon. For one, we got Galar Stunfisk and Skarmory, two really powerful Steel-type Pokemon, and then we got Talonflame and Alola Marowak. Basically the only fire-type Pokemon that matter in the Great League for the most part. And then we've got Venusaur, a powerful poison-type Pokemon. So these 5 Pokemon are probably 5 of the biggest counters to Charm users out there, you know, aside from Bastiodon, of course. And, well, they're out. So clearly Charm users are going to be a bit more powerful than they were before. Now, is Bastiodon going to have to do the whole anti-Charm job on its own? Well, of course not. Like I said before, Galar Stunfisk kind of kicked Registeel out of the meta before, and with Galar Stunfisk getting kicked out, well, guess who's back? Yeah, Registeel. And to that end, other big counters to Registeel have also gotten kicked out, like Talonflame, Alola Marowak. You know, I've never seen Registeel and Talonflame in the same meta before. I may never will. But this thing definitely kicks its butt. The only 2 real electric-type Pokemon, aside from, like, Lantern, also kicked out. And then Swampert, of course, really annoying for Registeel to deal with. And then Azumarill, their matchup was pretty even. But, you know, Registeel definitely doesn't appreciate fighting Azumarills. So a lot of counters to Registeel and the bane of Registeel itself kicked out of the meta. So I think we can anticipate seeing some Registeels out there. So with that knowledge, what kind of meta are we looking at? Are we going to get a cool, cyclical, paper, scissors, rock, lizard, Spock type graph from the Swagman? Well, of course you are. It's SwagTips. Like, how could I talk about a meta and not use a graphic? So a simple way to conceptualize like a metagame, especially a new metagame, is to start with the obvious and work from there. So what's obvious to us, having all this Great League experience and knowing the ban list, is that the Charm users are probably going to be a little bit unhinged. They're going to be more powerful than they have been before. But to that end, we also know that there are big Steel types out there to counter them, and the Steel types are already really good against a lot of the metas, so arguably more important than ever. So in anticipation of the greatness of Charm and the greatness of Steel, I got Steel type Pokemon that also beat other Steel type Pokemon, but may have weaker alternative matchups, and then we've got, you know, the full-on Charm beatdown. And then you can presume from there that the Charm users beat just about everything else, and just about everything else beats down on the Steel types. So who beats down on the steel types the best, though? That's the real question. And yeah, I think we all know who that is. That's the Mud Boy Fight Club here. Just about every time I do a Great League graphic or a Meta Simplified graphic in just about any context, the fighting types and the Mud Boys, if you will, usually end up getting grouped together because they have pretty even matchups against each other, and then they both do one thing extraordinarily well, and that's beat down on steel type Pokemon. Now, of course, this whole group, for the most part, has relatively poor matchups against the Charm users, so the Charm wails down on the fighters and the Mud Boys wail down on the steel type Pokemon. Now with this group, I do want to highlight for you guys that this is a representative group. This is supposed to represent, generic water type Pokemon, the Mud Boys, Pokemon with counter, like fighting type, roll type Pokemon, but it's not an exhaustive group of those Pokemon. So like Scrafty, Obstagoon, Vigoroth, water cast form, those kind of things, like those do belong to this group, and they're not featured in this graphic. They weren't left out because they're bad or anything. It's just that it gets to be really cluttered really quick. So if you know in your heart of hearts that Vigoroth has counter, and that means that it functions like a fighting type Pokemon, well then yeah, it would function in this group. So you got to use a little bit of your own brain, because the Great League has so many freaking good options that all have their own little niches that make them better than other Pokemon but worse than other Pokemon. So yeah, just understand that this is the fighting water ground group. This is what they do. They lose to Charm for the most part. They beat the steel type Pokemon for the most part, and they all have relatively even matchups against each other for the most part. Going on, the final group in this pentagram here, the Paper, Scissors, Rock, Lizard, Spock, everything having two counters and countering two groups. We have the Flying Ghosts, the Bird Ghost group over here. So these Pokemon generally beat down on the Mud Boys and the Fighting type Pokemon, and they generally have good matchups against Registeel and the Escavalier here. Escavalier being like something of a hybrid between a Steel type and a Fighting type Pokemon, counter user, right? And typically they have poor matchups against the Charm users, and then Bastiodon is basically the bane of their existence. Whoa, hold up, Ryan Swag. Where's Meganium? Where's Shadow Victreebel? Where's the Hypno? Where's the Frostlass? I think there's a lot of Pokemon you're leaving out of this infographic. Like I said before, the Great League is chock full of super viable Pokemon to use in PvP, all of them having their own little advantages and disadvantages over other Pokemon. Basically, what I did here with this graphic was highlight the 5 main corners that you're going to want to pay attention to in the meta. So there are Pokemon that do break these molds, but they're not like super big threats that you always want to have in the back of your mind. Using Hypno as an example, Hypno trades blows with Charm users. It generally carries the advantage, but circumstances depending, it could fall behind them. Depending on what charge moves it has, it can overcome the flying type Pokemon and some of the ghost types and some of the fighting steals, if you will, over here. For the most part, Hypno does beat the fighters, but it can run into trouble against the Mud Boys. The one thing that is really certain about Hypno is that Bastiodon completely claps it unless it has Focus Blast. So, how am I supposed to wedge Hypno into this graphic here and have it be useful to people? In that respect, you can think of this graphic as a way to prepare for the meta. Like, you don't really need to prepare for Hypno. If you make a good balanced team that can address the 5 corners of this meta, then you probably have Hypno covered. But if you were to miss out on covering one of these corners in your team building process, well then, you'd get punished pretty big. Like, forgetting to have a specific counter to Hypno isn't as devastating as forgetting to have a specific counter to Charm or to Bastiodon. Like, if you forget to counter Bastiodon or Charm, these Pokemon are going to just rip right through your team, and you're going to feel like a big old fool. But Hypno you can work around pretty easily. I guess if you were to have a super vulnerable team, you'd probably want to patch that up, but definitely not the first thing that comes to mind in the team building process. There you go. There's Hypno. He's not bad. Shadow Victreebel is also worth thinking about too, because, the Bastiodon Victreebel Grasshole Core is still a thing that exists in this meta. Shadow Victreebel can perform generally well against most of the fighting type Pokemon. With Acid Spray, it can overcome some of the Steel fighters here, and because it is a poison type Pokemon, it generally has the advantage over the charm users. One thing that really beats this guy down is confusion users, so like Hypno, and then you've got the flying type Pokemon. Not so much like the ghost types that aren't flying type Pokemon, but the flying type Pokemon definitely give Victory Bell some issues. But Victory Bell is still a very powerful Pokemon, a threat to definitely look out for. Like, don't be weak to Bastiodon Victory Bell. Just not good. And then we also have Meganium. I mean, Altaria is still here, but Skarmory is out of the picture, and Skarmory is probably one of the biggest threats in existence to Meganium's life. So Skarmory being out is good for Meganium because that's one less thing Meganium has to worry about. Talonflame too. Talonflame is also pretty annoying. And then people using Pelipper as like the safe switch or like a Skarmory kind of stand-in, well, they have to be really wary of those Frenzy Plants coming from the Meganium here. So I think Meganium's definitely a powerful Pokemon that's definitely worth considering for your team building and a threat that you might want to be mindful of. It doesn't play, you know, perfectly well like a fighting type, Mudboy type Pokemon does, but it's roughly in that same kind of group. And then out of all the Pokemon I could possibly highlight for the purposes of this video, one that I think is kind of interesting in this particular meta is Beedrill. Beedrill, pretty unsuspecting, right? It's a poison type Pokemon, so it resists the charm users and can beat them. And then it also has Drill Run, so it has play into, you know, these steel type Pokemon. These two generally beat it because they got rock type attacks, but you know, the Drill Run is something that they really don't want to be on the receiving end of. And then when it comes to fighting type Pokemon, poison resists fighting. So Beedrill, you know, it doesn't want to get hit by a Mud Bomb, it doesn't want to get hit by a Psychic or, you know, a Rock Slide, but it is the kind of Pokemon that these guys generally don't want to deal with. The Ghost types and the Flying type Pokemon make pretty short work of the Beedrill here, but Beedrill does carve a pretty interesting niche in this particular meta. Beedrill has always been like a little bit on the cusp of the meta before. Like it's good enough, but not quite good enough. And I feel like with the particular ban list that we have here, banning a lot of Pokemon that just clap Beedrill in half, I think this might be Beedrill's time to shine. But don't take my word for it. If you don't think Beedrill's all that, I'm a little bit skeptical myself. But on paper, it sounds pretty good. The final question to the Remix Cup meta, now that the meta has been simplified for you, is what are the winning teams? What's the good team, Ryan Swag? How do I build a team for the Remix Cup meta? And the answer is the same way you build teams already, you fool. The map is right here for you. For example, what if you wanted to lead Bastiodon? So what does Bastiodon lose to? Well, Bastiodon loses to the Steel Fighters and the Fighting and the Mudboy group over here. So these two groups. So how do you back up Bastiodon? Well, you'd probably want to back it up with a Flying Ghost. Maybe two Pokemon from the Flying Ghost group. Maybe a Pokemon from the Flying Ghost group and a Fighting type Pokemon or a Mudboy that has good neutral matchups against other Fighting type Mudboy Pokemon. That's typically how team building processes go. Now that I mention it, I actually saw a thumbnail the other day from one of Zionic's video. It was like, this team is illegal, call the police, because they're using this team. And that team was just that. You had a Bastiodon, and it was backed up by Medicham and Sableye. The illegal team. Well, here's the blueprint. Now you can build any illegal team that you want to. Well, what if you don't want to use that illegal team? What if you want to build your own illegal team to throw people off? Well, you can copy that same method. You got Registeel over here. What does Registeel lose to? It loses to these two groups for the most part. So how do you cover Registeel's weaknesses? Well, you've got Charm users, and then you've got this own group here. You could go Registeel double Charm, or you could go Registeel with one Charm, and then one of these bird ghosts. But yeah, team building is that simple. That's why I go through the effort of making these simplified graphics to not only help me understand the meta and help me build teams to fight against people, but also to help you guys. That's why I'm here sharing it. And yeah, so you want to build your own special illegal team that's all balanced and good and stuff. Well, you know, pick a lead. Like, I don't know, you want to lead Medicham? Lead Medicham. Well, what's Medicham weak to? It's weak to ghost types, flying types, charm users. So how do you back up Medicham? Well, you've got steel type Pokemon, and then you could also use charm users yourself. Brand new illegal team. You got the Medicham, Wigglytuff, Altaria. Watch out, because it's going to get you. At the end of the day, even though 9 of the most popular and powerful Pokemon in the Great League and Alolan Raichu have been kicked out of it, the Great League is still the Great League. So there is just still a smorgasbord of all sorts of really good Pokemon that you can take advantage of. Galar, Stunfisk, and Azumarill are out of the meta. Skarmory's out of the meta. Those are like the 3 big picks. And because of that, you know, Charm users and Steel-type Pokemon are a little bit better than what they had been before. And that is probably the biggest change overall when it comes to the Remix Cup meta and as far as team building is concerned. What about Abomasnow? It's a Ice Grass-type Pokemon. It generally loses to these Steel-type Pokemon. It struggles against the Charm users. It can beat the Ghost guys over here. Wins and loses to this group, you know, kind of trades blows. So I'd say overall Abomasnow is probably like a Charm user because it has the Ice type swag going on, and it can beat some of the Mud Boys. Not exactly the fighting type Pokemon all the time. That's a way to think about Abomasnow. Does it fit this mold perfectly? Not precisely, but I definitely encourage you guys to use your own brain here. And if you can't or you don't feel comfortable doing that, then just copy some Twitch streamer's team or a team that you see on YouTube. Boom. Easier than going through all this, right? But if you do want to build the super unique team and get ahead of the meta, well, then you got to think for yourself a little bit, or, you know. At any rate, this is my perspective on the Remix Cup meta. If you got any questions on this content, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. And if you enjoyed this content, you want to see more like it, you want some more meta simplified type videos, or you want to see the swag man whooping some butt in PvP, well, make sure to subscribe. I'd also like to give a special shout out to these patron supporters. You want to support the Swag Man on Patreon? Link in the description. Yo, Ryan Swag. I don't see. Where's the grass type Pokemon? Where is Meganium? Where is Victory Bell? Where's Frostlass?